Oi, oi, all right. How's it going? I'm Grant, you're you. This is the Doodle Review coming through with a new album to give a spin, chat some fraff about, and then assign a fucking pointless score to. Today, we're talking about the long-awaited new album, Rack, from the grinding noise rock masters, the Jesus Lizard. And I've spoken about this before. I may have mentioned it in almost every review I've done for a noise rock band, in fact. But Jesus Lizard have always been a touchstone band for me. It's actually a weird thing to say to a degree because I'm not super deep on all of their albums. But there's one moment in their discography that I place so highly that it's a reference point that I carry with me when approaching any song or album in the same musical space. Is the track Boilermaker from their 1992 record Liar. I just think the way the track is performed and mixed is one of the great marvels of the 20th century music. Honestly, the track is built around this groove where the guitars slide down into this one grinding chord. The bass and guitar hit the downbeat in perfect sync with the snare hit, but the mixing makes it sound like it's plunging and retracting each time. The sound almost creates a vacuum, like your ears are going to get pulled into the speaker. And it's kind of hard to describe, but I've never really heard it anywhere else. And it's like my favorite shit ever. This sound was achieved in part by the masterfully caustic production of Steve Albini, who helped birth all in all four of the band's albums as well as their first EP. Sadly, due to a falling out, the fruitful partnership couldn't continue beyond those first releases, and you hear the impact of this disillusion on the Lizards' last couple records before they broke up in '99. Shot and Blue are still great, but their edges are just a little less serrated than those first golden records. Moments like the sheer majestic degradation of Boilermaker were just a little out of reach, even if the band's motives were no less fierce. Lizard frontman David Yao and Albini did ultimately patch things up. However, the now since passed legendary Chicago producer didn't have anything to do with the making of Rack, the band's first record in 26 years. Miraculously, though, the band and relatively new producer Paul Allen have found a way to recapture 90% of that golden age sound on Rack, and combined with the sheer virility of the performances, seriously, this assembly of 50 or 60-year-olds sound more alive than some new artists I've heard in their 20s. It makes for one of the best reunion albums I've heard. I think it's more than any fan could have really hoped for. Opening with Hide and Seek, it's immediately clear that the band aren't fucking around at all. The track punches you right in the face with these huge accented chords before barreling into a chugging sequence that gives way to absolutely unhinged lead guitar segues and reaches a fever pitch when the full driving chord progression is let off the chain. Yao is viciously wailing, screaming, growling all the way. Reading up on interviews with the band in the lead up to this, what comes through is how thoughtful they were about releasing new material. Reuniting to play live as they have on and off since 2009 is one thing, but it doesn't go on your permanent record in the same way a new LP does. The band had a lot of trepidation about adding to that record, with frontman Yao initially even refusing. That led the rest of the band actually to write almost in secret, and it wasn't until they had material they considered worthy that they shared recordings with Yao. The intensity of those rough demos finally convinced the frontman and now sometimes actor that they could, in fact, meet the standard they set back in the 90s. And just the idea that the band were ready to abandon the whole notion of a comeback album if it didn't excite them or impress them speaks to a rare integrity these days. And I think you can hear that in the final album. The guitar of Dwayne Dennison, the bass of David W.M. Sims, and drums of Matt McNeely are so locked in, their instruments played with such intensity. There's intention here to just knock the heads off of anyone who doubts they could match their own 90s ferocity all this time later. With the band laying down the gauntlet, Yao isn't able to soften his lyrics or delivery even if he wanted to. As a result, Rack sees the frontman at his most joyous and maniacal. In Hide and Seek, he's wailing about being captured by a witch, being bitten and dragged by this battle axe with no sense of humor. Among the fantastic trashy humor, though, are vivid descriptions that stick with you. The act of abrading wore off my legs and feet, a dark cherry trail down some 60 miles of street. They say age softens most people, and that probably still holds true. In a New York Times interview, Yao describes being kind of sheepish about demoing vocals at home, hoping his wife had to run errands to feel less awkward. Nevertheless, while he might be a domesticated older gentleman, he's still able to tap into the insanity. Next to the more poetic portrayals of violence, you also have gems like I've given golden showers to folks who have been dead for hours. as well as talking about popping the head off your sister. Yep, the reunited Jesus Lizard are firing on all cylinders here, delivering rages as well as dispatches of eerie and atmospheric noise rock. A personal favorite is the track What If, where the reverb guitar conjures a dank, dark underground scene, a flickering light bulb, and a wooden chair ominously empty in the middle of the room. Grind is one of my favorites of the bangers here. Sim's exceptional bass tone carves a galloping riff that's reminiscent actually of Jane's Addiction's tune Ain't No Right. The track sounds like if that band were raised in captivity and force-fed a media diet of the grimiest video nasty horror flicks. Motor, later in the album, is maybe the only track that I'm not fully invested in. The central riff is a noise rock take on a pretty vanilla rock and roll standard phrase, but it's still delivered with all the intensity of the surrounding tracks and doesn't pull down the record as a whole all that much for me. This is one of the best comebacks any fan could have hoped for. I'm going to give it a 9 and knock it on the head. That's just what I think, though. What do you lot reckon? Hit me up in the comments. Let me know your favorite Jesus Lizard album. Check the description below for reviews that you might be interested in. And if you can be asked to do all that, you may as well subscribe. Stick around, share some thoughts, show some love, or just have some abuse in the comments. And I'll see you in the next video. Right, if you're still here, if you're someone that likes my content and has plans to actually watch more of it, then this message is for you. I want you to email me, doodlereview.club@gmail.com, put the subject line as the video that you've just watched, and I'm going to send you something cool. The idea here is that I really want to take this community, it's a small one, it's a tiny one, but I want to take it out of YouTube and do something else at some point. I don't know what that is yet, but if you email me, you're going to be the first in line for it, and I will get back to you with something cool based on the review that you've just watched. All right, mate. Take care. There you go. Cheers then. Bye.